The sun rose over the plains in a haze of golden dust, painting the ranch in tones of fire and warmth. Emily, 24, stepped onto the rough-hewn boards of the farmhouse porch, the wooden planks creaking beneath her boots, and carried with her the weight of unseen burdens. She had come to wash the dishes and mend the clothes, the routine work that others dismissed as mundane, yet in her hands it became a quiet assertion of purpose. She moved with deliberate care, each gesture precise, a rhythm born of habit and necessity, yet threaded with the subtle grace of someone who had learned to survive by noticing the world in ways others overlooked. Her hair, loosely braided and catching the morning light, seemed almost aglow against the simple cotton dress she wore, and in that moment she was more than a worker. She was a presence that demanded attention without seeking it. James, 34, the cowboy who had inherited the ranch from a father who believed in the language of stubbornness more than kindness, observed her from a distance. Leaning against the railing of the porch, his arms crossed over a chest that bore the broad shoulders of labor and solitude, he watched her hands glide over each dish, each cloth, as though they were instruments of devotion. The lines of his face were etched with years of quiet endurance, eyes shadowed beneath the brim of a weather hat, lips set in a habitual neutrality that masked the flickers of curiosity he could not suppress. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten how to notice. Yet Emily made noticing unavoidable. She did not speak to him at first, nor did she need to. Her diligence was an unspoken conversation, a testament to resilience he had long assumed was extinct in the world around him. The old cook, a grizzled woman named Martha, grumbled from the kitchen doorway about the extra work Emily seemed to invite upon herself. Yet there was a softness in her eyes, a grudging acknowledgment that the girl brought a rare energy to the house. Even the young stable hand, timid and unsure, paused to watch Emily wring out the wet laundry with careful, practiced movements, a silent lesson in steadiness and dignity. Emily's work became a quiet orchestra, each sound, the scrape of a tin spoon, the splash of water in the basin, the whisper of fabric against her fingers, weaving a melody that filled the ranch with life the walls had long since forgotten. James shifted slightly, a subtle adjustment, as he studied her. He had encountered many women over the years, transient faces passing through the dust and wind, but none had carried with them the aura of quiet command that Emily possessed. There was no boastfulness in her movements, no attempt to charm or manipulate. She simply existed, fully present, fully herself, and the stark simplicity of her being demanded an honesty in response that James found both uncomfortable and compelling. Days passed, each blending seamlessly into the next. Emily arrived at dawn, hands already wet with the water she carried from the well, her eyes alert to the chores that needed attention. She sang softly at times, a melodic hum that wound its way through the rooms and out into the yard, reaching James even as he tended to the horses or mended fences. The melody was not loud, not a performance, yet it held a persistent grace that tugged at something long dormant within him. He began to notice the slight arch of her brow when she concentrated, the small smile that curved her lips when a task went smoothly, the fleeting shadow of fatigue that passed across her face in moments of strain. Each detail etched itself into his awareness, and with each observation, a tenderness grew that he neither sought nor fully understood. One afternoon, the sky darkened with sudden clouds, and the wind carried the scent of rain across the plains. Emily, steadfast in her work, did not retreat as the first drops began to fall. She scrubbed the porch steps, water mingling with the dirt beneath her hands, her movements unwavering. James, unable to ignore the stubborn determination that mirrored a part of himself he had long buried, ran to her side. The rain fell harder, soaking them both, plastering her hair to her forehead, darkening the cotton of her dress. Yet she laughed, a sound so pure and unexpected it seemed to part the clouds themselves. Her laughter was not loud, but it struck a chord deep within him, something tender and unguarded that demanded response. Without thought, he grabbed her hand, and they ran together to the barn, water spraying around their boots, hearts pounding with exhilaration and the sudden intimacy of shared endeavor. Inside the barn, Emily wrung out her clothes, the rhythmic motion of her hands steadying both the soaked fabric and the energy of the moment. James watched her, feeling an unfamiliar vulnerability take root. The simple act of drying cloths, of attending to tasks long ignored or undervalued, became a conduit for the emotion he had spent years suppressing. He found himself participating in the chores he had neglected, feeding animals, stacking hay, repairing fences, not from obligation, but from the subtle insistence of her presence, the silent lesson that effort, attention, and care were forms of communication more profound than words. Evenings unfolded with a soft, deliberate intimacy. Emily would sit on the porch steps, a cloth in her lap, stitching a tear or patching a garment, her focus unwavering yet light enough to allow the world to settle around her. James would sit nearby, silent but attentive, observing the grace with which she navigated small tasks, the patience that allowed her to see beyond the immediate need and into the essence of what she did. Occasionally, a word passed between them, a remark about the weather, an observation about the animals, a shared reflection on the simple routines of ranch life. And with each exchange, the bond deepened, built not on dramatic gestures or impulsive confessions, but on the accumulation of small, persistent acts of recognition and respect. One evening, a stray horse, panicked and skittish, rattled the barn door. The animal's fear was palpable, yet Emily approached it without hesitation, her hands steady on the reins, her voice a gentle guide that coaxed calm from chaos. James followed, instinctively protective yet increasingly aware that her strength was neither fragile nor dependent on him. She commanded trust not by force, but by presence, and he watched, amazed at the ease with which she connected with the creature, the quiet authority that radiated from her as naturally as the sun rose each morning. In that moment, the realization settled in his chest with undeniable clarity. He had been drawn to her not merely by necessity or circumstance, but by the extraordinary way she embodied courage, kindness, and unwavering authenticity. As the horse calmed, Emily turned to him, eyes meeting his with a directness that caught him unprepared. For weeks he had held his silence, afraid that words would diminish the depth of what had grown between them. Yet now, confronted with the undeniable presence of her gaze, he found the courage to speak. His voice was low, roughened by dust and wind, yet brimming with the sincerity he had long denied. "Emily, I can't stop noticing you. Every day, every task, every sound you make, it changes how I see this place, how I see myself. I don't just see the chores or the land anymore. I see you. And I can't imagine not seeing you." The words hung in the air, charged with vulnerability, and Emily's chest rose and fell as she absorbed the confession. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming relief of recognition, the acknowledgement that someone so steady, so strong, and so quiet could see the truth of her presence, could honor it without judgment or condescension. She stepped closer, brushing her hand against his, a delicate yet deliberate gesture, and James leaned slightly, their foreheads nearly touching, hearts beating in the same rhythm, the world outside the barn dissolving into irrelevance. "I feel the same," she whispered, voice trembling yet steadfast. And in those words, the tension of weeks of observation, restraint, and unspoken longing finally dissolved. The storm outside had passed, leaving the barn lit by the fading glow of the sunset, warm and golden, illuminating two people who had discovered in each other a rare and profound connection. It was not born of haste or spectacle, but of patient observation, of mutual respect, of the slow cultivation of understanding and admiration. In the gentle press of hands and the shared warmth of presence, they recognized a truth greater than words alone could convey, that love, like the resilient desert flora, grows quietly, insistently, and blooms fully only when nurtured by care, patience, and unwavering recognition of the other's worth. James held her hand lightly, a promise in the simple contact, and Emily rested her head against his shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of a bond that would endure the trials and tempests of life. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, kissed by the remnants of rain, carrying the scent of earth and hay, whispering an eternal truth, that hearts truly seen, truly honored, can transform even the harshest landscapes into spaces of hope, tenderness, and unspoken joy. And as the first stars began to pierce the darkening sky, their presence felt like a benediction over the ranch, over Emily, over James, over the quiet miracle of recognition, the triumph of patience, and the blooming of love that had been waiting, unnoticed, for a long time. For those who watch, remember this. The world may be rough, harsh, and demanding, but in the steady, patient acts of noticing, in the quiet recognition of courage and kindness, the human heart can find its way to connection, understanding, and profound fulfillment. Cherish the small moments, honor the quiet strength, and never underestimate the power of being truly seen. If this story touches you, like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you are watching from. Because hearts that recognize each other's worth connect across any distance, any time, and any circumstance.